Hello and welcome. That's right. You're trapped in NerdCage Live. This ain't just a reaction show, but a debate show and a live discussion on everything that makes people like you and I tick. So thank you for joining us tonight. Please hit that like button and subscribe. I'm your co-host, Jay St. G, coming to you live from Syracuse, New York. And always with me, the warrior from Wakanda, the fiend from Louisville, my man, Marq Withers. What's shaking today?
Hey, what's going on, man? Super excited to be here as usual. And yes, tonight we are going to be talking about the 25th anniversary of the US release of Jackie Chan's Supercop. Now, Jay, as you might recall, this is probably my favorite Jackie Chan movie. In fact, I fought valiantly in our very first Rage in the Cage for this movie. And I just wanted to find out from you, as the biggest Jackie Chan fan that I know, what are your feelings on this movie 25 years later?
Oh my gosh, this movie still holds up to today's standards of action and kung fu. Before we get into it, let's just take it back real quick to the beginning. So this is technically part 3 of Jackie Chan's Police Story saga. In the United States, this was released as a standalone film. But when Police Story began, quick story to that, Jackie Chan had an unsuccessful run in Hollywood with Cannonball Run along with The Protector. So his big FU to Hollywood was, I'm going to go back to Hong Kong and do this on my own. And that's how the first Police Story came about. Jackie Chan pretty much did everything himself. He starred, produced, directed, gathered his own stunt team as the majority of the actors in the movie, and basically made the movie on his own. This movie blew up in Hong Kong. Then the second one came about and he had a bigger budget and made a bigger movie. And then what was he going to do with part 3? Enter Stanley Tong. This is the first time Jackie and Stanley Tong ever teamed up together. And keep in mind, Stanley Tong was a very, very pronounced stuntman in Hong Kong, and Jackie really wasn't known for bringing outsiders in. Stanley Tong pretty much put Jackie over the top, bigger scale, bigger budget. As far as Police Story is concerned, the stakes were never higher. And of course, this was a reintroduction of the beautiful and amazing Michelle Yeoh.
Absolutely. This was actually the first movie that I ever saw Michelle Yeoh in, and wow, was I blown away by the things that she could do. You know, about a year later, she made her US debut in Tomorrow Never Dies, a James Bond film. And after that, I was sold. I just went back and watched everything that she was in, from Tai Chi Master to Wing Chun to the Heroic Trio to just about everything else that she had done up to that point. And I'm still a fan today.
And the amazing thing, she was never a trained fighter. She was a famous ballet dancer. Yet all the kung fu that she does in Supercop is just on par with everything that Jackie was doing. On top of that, and we've said this numerous times on other episodes, she did the most mind-blowing stunt of riding a motorcycle onto a rooftop of a moving train. Holy shit.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because Quentin Tarantino praised this movie as probably one of the best martial arts movies ever made. And in fact, he attributed that particular scene in Kill Bill, where Beatrix Kiddo actually says, "I would have jumped a motorcycle onto a speeding train for you."
Before Michelle did that stunt, the other stuntmen were kind of demonstrating how to do it. And the guy that was demonstrating the stunt ultimately broke his leg. But Michelle Yeoh wasn't even fazed by it, and she still went and did it anyway. Which leads to Jackie and the stunt that he does in the film. He felt like, oh my gosh, if I don't out-muscle her in this, I don't even belong here. So Jackie jumps off a rooftop, chasing a helicopter, and he grabs on. Jackie's hanging to dear life. And there's no safety net, no strings, no wires, no nothing. If Jackie lets go, he's dead, basically. And now that he's swinging around above the city, they're slamming Jackie against buildings and billboards in the process. They put cameras on the helicopter. They put cameras from cranes just to follow it. Listen, this is all real, no green screen. That is Jackie hanging for dear life. And my gosh, it's actually pretty scary to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, aside from those two major stunts that we just talked about and how incredible they are, what are some of your other favorite scenes from this movie?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the thing is, the first two Police Story movies have a little bit more kung fu than gun combat. This movie's kind of the opposite, where there's a lot more gun combat, but it's not just guns. You're talking rocket launchers and everything else. So my other favorite scene is where Michelle Yeoh's character is wearing the vest and she thinks it's full of dynamite. And
Right.
they're just trying to avoid any gunfire and everything else. And then the part where the grenade goes off in the hut there, and then Jackie jumps out of the hut just after it explodes. Oh my God, it's so awesome because, again, Stanley Tong took things to the next level because you see all these exploding huts everywhere and there's bodies burning. This is something you didn't see in previous Jackie Chan films, man. It's bonkers.
I particularly like the martial arts in general in this film, and even the simplest scenes that don't require a lot of gunplay or a lot of high stakes are fantastic, particularly the scene where they're actually fighting the cops in the bar as they're pretending to be criminals. Everybody involved in that fight choreography was amazing. I thought Michelle Yeoh really did her thing. Jackie did his thing. And also another good scene is when the cops are training.
Yes!
And they're sparring.
Session.
Like,
yes.
I love that sparring session between those two guys. I just thought that was some really good kung fu and really good fight choreography that they showed us there.
We've talked about this many times in many franchises where the part 3 usually is the weakest. Mark, you've said it before. You made the case how this is possibly the best police story movie. It's by far the biggest police story movie. To follow up the other two movies, where the first one, it's basically Jackie's trying to bust a drug dealer. The second one, he's trying to stop these terrorists. The third one, he's going undercover in mainland China. And there's such intensity between Jackie's character and Michelle's character, as well as the dangerous setting, because he's basically a fish out of water. He's a Hong Kong cop, and he's not comfortable in this dangerous setting, and just adds a whole new dimension that we haven't seen previously in the other police story movies. So you can still watch this as a standalone movie, but if you do the right thing and watch the other police story movies, you could see the progression of storytelling that they went from movie to movie.
Absolutely. Now let's just go ahead and cut right to the chase. Jay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this movie?
9 out of 10. This is probably one of Jackie's better stories. Let's just face it, his movies are not exactly known for storytelling. This one, I think, is done excellent, especially if you're lucky enough to get your hands on the Cantonese version of it. But the action is just so over the top, and it still looks great. I feel like action movies today pale in comparison to what Jackie and Michelle were doing in this movie. I gotta give that a 9 out of 10, man. What about you?
I think this might be the very first time that we've agreed on a score. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 9 out of 10 as well. The fight choreography, the stunts, the acting, the storytelling here are really on another level in terms of Hong Kong cinema and particularly martial arts cinema. It really raised the bar and raised the stakes for everything else that came after it. And so for that, I definitely appreciate it and stand by that score.
That being said, before we go, we please ask you to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and spread that shit like so USA from Louisville to Syracuse to all of our friends and fans around the world at NerdCage Live. Enjoy life, stay safe, and good night.
Sayonara.
Ooh, trying to get out of the NerdCage, are ya? Well, before you go, hit that subscribe button. And if you're really intrigued, ring that bell. Thank you for dropping by. Until next time, tell everyone you know about NerdCage Live!